Work session? Is that okay with you, Buck?
Yes, sir, Mayor.
Okay, good.
So we decided Eric's going first?
That's what I was told.
Oh, okay.
I don't have to. Who do you want to go first?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
I got you up first.
Here's the, so, we had a couple of conversations with elected officials about how to proceed here. And this is kind of my sense of what your expectations are, if I'm wrong, correct me. The problem with our prior approach was that the board felt like we were given budgets. It was kind of a fait accompli. Here's the budget, say yes or no to it. So there wasn't a lot of discussion about priorities, and it didn't appear to be, although it wasn't structured that way. We could have done that. It just didn't, the board members didn't feel that that was within their right to request. So what we're planning now is to start going through these budgets. No decision will be made. You will ask questions of the department director. You can solicit additional information in support of their proposal or anything else that you might want. But the decision will be delayed until every budget has been reviewed and you have received all of the information you think you need to make an informed decision. At the end of that process, we will then structure the budget with those individual pieces. And at that point, you can add to, delete from, multiply by, whatever you want to do to get to that final budget. My only request is, at that point, if we're going to be making amendments, that we engage the department directors, because their operational needs need to be considered when, if you're saying, I want you to cut 10%, they need to decide what the 10% is, not, in order to make things work for them, rather than just reducing everything by an arbitrary amount. So if that process, as it has evolved, is the way you want to proceed, here's Eric, let's start. If not, let's not start and tell me what else we should be doing.
Let's start.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening, Chief.
How are you guys? All right, you and lady.
Thanks.
So we have a couple of, just with the different approach that we have here, this is a little earlier than we typically have prepared budgets. So some of my numbers are not going to be hard numbers. It's hard to lock in like a lease agreement, on the rates 3 months early, 4 months early. So like the Prop P that was passed in April, they don't certify the tax rates until mid-July. So the numbers that I have in here are really just my best guess with the numbers that we had available at the time. So they could come in higher, they could come in lower. Our hope is that they come in higher. But as advertised in the promotion of the Prop P, every dime of that will go towards salary and related expenses. So you'll see a substantial increase in some of my line items, like loggers, which is our retirement program, unemployment insurance, FICA and Medicare. Those are all salary-based line items. So I have, with the numbers that I had and Sue had, we've estimated what that increase will be, and we're going to take that off the top of the Proposition P money, so that that's not coming out of other city funds. But we'll finance or pay for those line items out of the tax money that we're going to generate from Prop P.
But, I was just going to say, but that's maintaining everyone at the same level.
As far as like the unemployment insurance and things like that, I mean, it's what they tell us. We have to.
As loggers is what I'm actually, is that what I?
That's based
yeah.
on salary, right?
Yeah.
Right, but it's still going to be the same percentage as all the other city employees.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
And as far as overtime goes, you're not increasing that at all?
Again, when we see where we're at the initial plan was to take every dime and put it into overtime and salaries, and then Alderman Prince brought up, these other increases will take place, and so we've refigured some of that. We've refigured it a dozen times, trying to figure out where all those are going to come in. So should we have an excess of money, or the tax rate comes in higher, which we're hoping is the case, then we would likely fund overtime with that. Because obviously that will be, and we have worked, you know, it's hard with a revolving door to stay on top of that, but we're really working to make sure when we're scheduling people that we know will be overtime, you know, to make sure that that's.
My next question was, do you think now that you are expecting less turnover, that the overtime
That's the
won't
hope.
be as much of an issue?
There's sickness, there's vacations, there's sure
But did you,
fat,
I guess my question really is, were you experiencing a lot of overtime costs because of the higher turnover?
Some, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so training expenses when we're having new officers come in. So yes, the hope is that some of that will flatline, you know, with a lower turnaround.
Okay, thank you.
So-
Sorry to interrupt.
No, I have a question. And actually, you kind of addressed some of the, it was a public safety issue. So, it's the intent of this board, arguably future boards, to support police salaries, because that was the perceived need. Hopefully, the economy will continue to improve and it will generate more money. Would you expect that money would always be used 100% to support police salaries? If it started producing 30% more than you budgeted or anticipated?
I would say that would be a decision of the board. I mean, it would still be, I mean, it would need to be public safety related, obviously, because that's the way
Well, we understand that.
Arguably, I don't know that we've seen a tremendous increase in property values over the last 30 years.
No,
Maybe
you
we
know,
have.
things are happening in this town.
Yeah. Again, I mean, our priorities at the time when we were passing this was trying to get more comparable with the sheriff's department. This is putting us close. You know, like I said, with the other additional expenses that are coming off of that, there's
Of course,
still.
the other argument is that they're going to continue to advance the pay of the sheriff's deputies.
Correct.
We'll have to try and keep up with that in the long run. Okay.
I understand there's a lot of property values that went up recently. Mine went up $27,000.
Just on the reassessment.
Yes, on a reassessment.
Oh, yeah. That's that mansion you live in.
Yeah, right.
So, to answer your question, I guess, you know, our priority was taking care of the employees, and I think that you guys have certainly done that, and the voters have done that. So beyond that, you know, I certainly trust your judgment on that.
Eric, our K-9 expense is, how come it's so low at 8 months?
We budget for veterinarian visits,
Say that fast.
10
food,
times.
things of that nature. We do get a donation every year from Mississippi Lime that we put into the K-9 fund, so we try to spend that donated money when we can to save some of the line item on that.
Okay.
And you may not have vet bills
Yes.
budgeted for, but
Okay.
you
Gotcha.
have to use.
Yeah, veterinarian, grooming, things of that nature. We bought a GPS collar for them, you know, for the tracking and things like that. So as expenses come up, we try to buy things, but again, it's, you know, we try to be reasonable with that. The only other major increase, aside from salaries, and again, that will be a tax-funded increase, so I know that the bottom line looks considerably larger, but we're hoping to have $160,000 to $170,000 of that covered with the property tax. Would be in police vehicles. Again, we would be looking at continuing our two-car replacement that we've done in the past. With this being the first year that we may see a substantial increase in the resale value of the cars that we're getting rid of. They would be 2010 cars, which again is still 8 years old, 9 years old, but I say that. I guess these would be 12s, probably 2012s that we would be getting rid of. And, you know, they're in varied condition and you know, are certainly serviceable. We've had some issues with some of the EcoBoost stuff with the turbochargers that are in the V6 engine that have been a maintenance item for us, but we're certainly still within budget on that. But that would be what we would look at replacing the two Tauruses, or two of the Tauruses, I should say. And then we maintained a line item that had been increased.
That goes to chief, maybe.
That had been increased previously, the 2019 budget for office equipment, which is 8005, was increased to 21,100 last year. We would ask to keep that at 21,000 to replace our server and computers in the department. They're 10 years old. I bought them when I came in, so they're starting to fail.
You consult with anybody on that, or?
Yeah, we've talked about that. We'll have to put it out for bid. You know, there is state bid pricing for some of that, but as far as the and installation and maintaining, you know, we would look at, it's not necessarily proprietary, but there are people that specialize in our reporting software and the camera system that we run that are already knowledgeable in that, so that would certainly be in our bid specs. We have consulted a guy that we know uses, a lot of the departments use and are happy with, to get some of the preliminary numbers, but like I said, when we put it out to bid, we would make sure and, you know, be fair in the bid specs, but we would want somebody that's familiar and has some security recommendations. So.
What did you use the additional funds for this fiscal year?
We bought a new copier,
Okay.
and it was a maintenance plan, I believe, but there was an upfront expense. So we actually eliminated all of our standalone printers. We went with a networked printer, copier, fax machine, scanner, and like I said, we networked it in, so it saved us a considerable amount of money and other office expenses. So.
It really is amazing. We did the same thing.
Yeah.
It really is amazing.
So those would be the only three things that I would anticipate an increase, or really two of them are an increase. One of them will just be maintaining what we have. Again, some of this is shooting from the hip. Dispatching, we will anticipate going up some because it does every year, so I increased that a little bit. Our ITI goes up 3%, I think, so I figured that in. But until we get a little closer to time, I won't put it out for bid or request those numbers, because they will change some closer to October or September. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
What is our current vehicle rotation on the vehicles?
We had 10 officers and 10 vehicles. We added an 11th officer when Lisa moved from our police clerk was court clerk, and now will be in City Hall, and we added an 11th officer, so now we have 11 vehicles, but we're still doing 2 cars per year.
Okay.
So the original plan was keep them for 5 years, try to sell them around 50,000 miles, which is when the Highway Patrol sells theirs, in hopes of selling the 2 and being able to buy one with that money and only finance 1 car. So that would be the hope this year. You know, I'm budgeting for the whole amount, and then my hope was that the general fund will get a substantial reimbursement from the sale of the 2 cars. In the last few years, we have rolled one of the cars to another department, the fire department or building inspector, street department. But this year, so far as I know, would be the first year that we could actually try to sell both the vehicles and recoup some of that money.
Chief,
Yes,
who do we sell these vehicles to? What a quick explanation of the selling process.
We've done both. We've taken them to auction. When Alderman Stupi was on the board, he would take them to auction, and that worked well for us. We've gone to Gov Deals.
The what?
It's there are websites that specialize.
GovDeals.com?
Gov Deals, and Purple Wave is another one. And they specialize in municipal overstock, crate, whatever, so.
And
it satisfies
our requirements as far as.
Beauty, thank you.
And I have 2 vehicles that I'm ready to do. The one is been sitting out there for a while, which was negotiating with St. Mary's, but they decided to do something else. So I need to have a water department truck that need to be put on the auction sites.
Plus the current Crown Vic that the fire department has.
As I said, when it's sitting there.
Oh, what about the brown one?
The brown one's the one setting, he's talking about the silver one that they're using now that they bought the
Oh, yeah.
Suburban
Right,
or
yeah.
Tahoe or
Not
whatever.
three.
So we'll have 3, yeah.
So what happens when you sell all those vehicles?
The money goes back in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
any money the city receives
Right.
from the disposal of an asset goes back into the general fund. It doesn't refund the individual department's line item.
Right.
So once it's spent, it goes back in, and then at the end of the year, that money will be part of what we, in the budget year, what we calculate. You decide how to spend it, but it'll be in our cash carryover. It doesn't give them any budget, because those revenues aren't anticipated by Sue when she does her revenue projections.
The street though, like if street vehicle sales or parked or washed,
It goes back into the city, yeah. Okay.
A phone call away, so if you guys think of something that didn't come up now, please feel free to call me. Thank you.
Thanks, Jake.
If you do solicit information to clarify some uncertainty, then make sure you share that with, at our next meeting or something, so that everybody has the same information base. Okay, fire department.
Good evening, folks. Good evening. My budget has basically been the same since I've taken over as chief up for the last 4 or 5 years, with a couple $1,000 change. This year I'm asking for a total of like $2,200 more. The reason I'm asking for that is $1,000 for vehicle insurance, because we just put a $750,000 million truck online and the insurance went up. Also asking for $1,000 in the uniform protective clothing allowance. The turnout gear that you're going to approve tonight later was $8,600, I believe, off the top of my head, and I only had $9,000 in the budget last year, so I'm anticipating a slight increase. And we also receive a donation annually from Mississippi Lime, and this year we were able to put a couple of years' worth together, and our guys are going to be coming out in uniforms here, right sharp, with badges and collar brass, and we'll start looking more like a fire department. So I may need to be able to buy an extra shirt or a pair of pants out of that too. So, and then the only other thing that I asked for an increase on was my membership dues. And doing some research over the last few years, the prior chief in administration was only signing 4 or 5 of our guys up for what they call the Missouri Firefighters Association. And basically that's $10 per member. And if I sign the guys up and sign the entire department up, they qualify for quite a bit of benefits through it. Things like if they lose a pair of glasses or break a pair of glasses on scene, this association will pay $200 to help replace glasses. If they have a fire loss of any kind, they'll pay $500 to help cover some of the fire loss of one of our members. There's scholarships available for them and their children. So for $10 a person, I think it's a good investment for a couple $100 to help cover and give the guys a few things. But I'd be willing to entertain any questions. It's pretty much the same
So
for
I'd
a
like
couple years.
to point out that we've had 2 major departments make a presentation to us here, and both of them had mentioned grants they get from Mississippi Lime to assist in city operations. And I think that's noteworthy, because a lot of people sit around and say, well, what does Mississippi Lime do for us? Well, they do things.
Yeah, they do.
They aren't big and spectacular, and they don't seek recognition, but they do make those kinds of contributions.
I have a question. On your building repair and maintenance,
Yes.
your budget, we're looking at now, we got a building that needs to be painted.
Yeah.
So, do you have what do you do, what do we do about that? I mean, if it's not in our budget, I don't know what that would cost to.
Actually, I brought some paperwork with me. I didn't have time to make copies of it. Our building was last paid in 2010,
Yeah.
and it was done by Ritter Painting. Hopefully I remember to bring it.
Is that in your budget?
No, it's not.
Okay.
When I reviewed the bids that were, I didn't bring it with me, I'm sorry. When I reviewed the bids that we have on file, it was $26,000 to do it right, which was paint the outside, seal the block on the training tower, and paint the insides, which did not get done the last time, paint the doors. The whole thing was $26,000. From the best records that I can come up with for our history, we paid $14,000 and just had the outside painted, and that's all we did. So to do it like it really ought to be done, we'd be looking at $26,000. The $12,000 line item that we have from building maintenance is the everyday repairs.
That's what I was getting at, because we don't budget. And that's one thing we're not doing a very good job, I think, of budgeting any kind of money to take care of what we have. And we let things just get in disrepair, and then we end up spending a bunch of money trying to catch up.
Emergencies.
Emergencies. So
Maintenance
I would like to see us in a budget, in our budgets, to start figuring this stuff
I
out.
agree.
Like a maintenance
So can you
plan?
go back
Maintenance, I
and
mean,
just add that?
I want to add something like that to, that's a big line item, that $26,000 or $30,000.
Over a certain number of years, though.
But what happens when we have to repair, that roof's gonna need repair one of these days? There's gonna be gutter work that's gonna be needed. Like right now, you got a ponding issue out there at your facility. Every time it rains, you got a lake down there and the one entrance down there.
Yeah, myself and Gary have been talking about that.
Have you?
The intention is to dig a trench between the hospital parking lot and us and make it deeper where it drains better, because we're retaining water not only in our lot, but also up on the city street too.
Yeah, I noticed that in the last couple of rains, so. But that was something that I would like to see us, this board, at least start thinking about those things, because there's maintenance issues with our facilities, the welcome center down there.
So are we recommending that each department adds a line item to their budget for maintenance plan?
If they are maintaining the building.
That makes
Yeah, I
sense.
mean,
The $12,000 that we have been using, we use about $6,000 to $7,000 for regular everyday maintenance, and I try to get in one bigger project. Last year we did windows, because all our windows were getting rotted, so we put all replacement windows in the building. The year before that, we painted and sealed the parking lot, so we try to get one big thing out of it, usually in the $4,000 range, and then the other $6,000 is day-to-day operations. But
okay, I get that.
but there's no way I can come up with
$26,000.
$26,000 to do what really needs to be
Well,
done
we
today.
need to do it because we don't want the building it'll
Yeah.
start rotting from the inside out, so. Joe?
Maintenance items would not be considered capital, right? The capital improvement?
They're not.
Okay.
And how many years would that $26,000 paint job be good for?
The last paint job we had was done in 2010, and right now in 2009, I can run my hand down it and have paint on my fingers.
So it's overdue.
Oh, yeah.
So overdue.
Maybe 5 years it's good for, maybe 6?
That would be something that you could write into the contract and specs. I didn't really get a chance to sit down and really look over the specs they had, but I think they had a 7 to 8 year guarantee on the paint, which it made that guarantee, but it's not making much of there.
So I guess what I'm suggesting is that number be divided over the next 5, 6 years, however long that paint is good for, or similar project.
Well, what we're gonna have to do is, we're gonna have to pay up front to paint it,
Yeah,
and then the future, 8 years or 10 years from now, I'd like to have the money for that, or roof repairs. In 10 years, we could possibly need roof repairs.
Let's hope not.
Well, I'm just telling you, the reality of it.
We actually do have some small leaks now.
Yeah,
We're
that's-
replacing ceiling tile on occasions, so there are some leaks up there, not major, that's not causing any major problems. And it's a structural steel building with masonry, so we're not having wood rot problems or anything like that, but we obviously still do have issues.
What's the roof system? It's a, word I'm looking for. It's a steel roof, but
It's a steel roof that was put on by Drury Company, and we've had, from my understanding, we've had them back up numerous times, and they could never figure out a good fix. I had talked to Alderman Donovan about it one time, and we kind of talked about looking at it and see what it needed, and we just never have accomplished that.
it's standing seam is what I was looking for.
Yes.
It's not exposed fasteners.
No, I think it is standing seam.
Where the seams interlock.
I believe it is.
The whole point is, start and prepare, just like we did with putting away some money for the next truck, rather than waiting to do one big lump sum.
So you could go back, just add 25 or 30,000 or
You were making the
to get the
distinction
painting
between
going up
maintenance and
to date,
capital.
right?
But we're gonna have to get
So
that.
maybe
caught
two
up.
line items
Yeah.
required.
Then add
Yeah.
two, I don't know how much you add, that's.
Right,
Before we add, why don't you check out, maybe get some
bids.
order of magnitude estimates from somebody?
right, I just wanted to cover that as well, just like every other city, when we award contracts, you still have to go through the bid process.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we don't want to bid it now.
No, but we have to have the requirements,
Right.
what we're looking for, the details.
But we got a building that's gonna be needing painting soon.
Copy that.
Actually, I'm gonna be talking to painting companies anyhow, because last year I wanted to get the interior painted, and I ran out of time, I could only find one painter. So this year I've got two painters to choose from, so I'll be talking to them about getting bids on that to start with, so I can
Yeah.
go further with it and ask them some questions on what they anticipate for the outside too. I can bring that back
We
to
wanna
you.
take care of it, keep it up, it's a beautiful facility.
Maybe maintenance.
Well, one portion of the building is flat roof, how's that?
The back portion is flat roof, and it's my understanding, I didn't take a big part in the construction, but it was my understanding that was to save money. The flat roof was cheaper than putting a pitched roof in the back end. We really don't have any issues back there right now, but flat roofs are notorious for developing leaks over time.
We'll just fix it when we have to.
Okay, same program. Pick us up and call Kenny. If he responds, bring it back to the table.
So would that increase go into building repairs / maintenance for a 26,000 increase?
Right,
That's what I would
That's
anticipate.
where it
If
would go.
building repair and maintenance.
I would just make sure if we do
I
that.
would assume so. I'm kind of like you, I'm kind of new to this process too.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
still
what
learning.
I just wanted to make sure, this way,
Qualify
we're
what
on
they
the
are,
same page here.
because there's a big difference.
Chief, is there any special
I think we need
consideration
both.
to
That's my
cleaning
point.
of the protective
humble opinion.
clothing? For
Uh,
carcinogens and stuff like that, or?
They do recommend that you use a thing called the turnout gear extractor. And every year I apply for what they call AFG grant, Assistance to Firefighter grants. And in that grant request, I do have a request for a extractor, which is basically an oversized commercial laundry machine for turnout gear specific. The price on those are about $8,000 to $9,000. If this doesn't go through, they have come out now with a smaller version that I'm looking into that's $4,000 or $5,000. And they also have a company in St. Louis area that has a contract type service that you pay X amount of dollars per year and you can send stuff to them and they clean it too. So if the grant doesn't come through, we should know something in the next few months on that. Then I'm looking at other options and opportunities. The building actually has a rough end for the machine out there. So if we do get lucky and get the grant, it's ready to put in. It's just a matter of getting it here.
You feel like we're covered though? We're doing.
For the amount of actual working fires we have, yeah, we're adequate. Actually, if you do too much cleaning on it too, it can take some of the fire protective coatings out of it. So most manufacturers recommend you don't wash it more than 2 or 3 times a year with that specialty thing. Most of the time it's what we call just gross decon, using like a Dawn soap and a scrub brush, and that gets most of the worst of it off. But the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association, is one that set the guidelines on what you should do. And with our turnout gear replacement program, part of which you guys are voting on tonight, we replace 4 sets of gear every year. So the oldest set of gear that I have on guys that will actually go into a fire is 2005. So I'm within a couple of years of what they're actually recommending, keeping this rotation going. So that's a real good thing.
Is that line item 7055 PS volume fire, or VO, volunteer firemen, excuse me, what is that line for? P/S 7055.
7055.
Right there.
Professional volunteer firemen's services. The city started years ago, back when I was a young firefighter. It was basically an allowance, a long time ago, Joe, yes. It's an allowance that the city has graciously given our firefighters. It amounts to $360 a year. And what we do is we base that off a number of trainings they make. So they have to make at least 75% of the trainings to get the full $360. And what we encourage people to do is, because we are volunteers, and we encourage them to use that for our training nights. So if they need a babysitter for a few hours, it helps cover their cost. If they run a shirt or a pair of pants on a fire call, it helps recoup some of the costs that they expend for gas on their vehicles and things like that. So,
Thank you.
right, rural fire fund?
Basically, the rural fire fund is a fund that's not actually part of the city budget, but it's money that's available for us to use for major purchases and repairs and things like that. I hesitate to call it a slush fund, but that is the fund that we used for the headset and the radio for our new truck. And we have funding in there in the education line item. We're hopefully going to be sending some of our guys to the firefighter 1 and 2 certification program in January. It's probably going to be sending them to Cape. So that'll cover the tuition and things like that over and above the regular everyday trainings that we do. That's why we have the training line item in the regular budget and the training in the rural fire fund.
Well, at the risk of offending Kenny, it is part of the city budget.
What?
Any, the receipt and the subsequent use of any funds the city receives must be in accordance with the budget that is approved by the Board of Aldermen.
So it is earmarked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we count for it separately.
Right.
Because it doesn't come from general revenue, it comes from
That's what I meant.
fire tags.
I misspoke.
There's been previous discussion about possibly raising the fees on the rural fire tags. Is there been any progress or any need for that, or?
Yeah, that's a decision that you guys have to decide whether or not you think it warranted. I did a survey, I don't have it with me, I can look it up and forward it to you guys on what the neighboring agencies are charging, and we're right in that ballpark, and actually, if you do within the 1,500 foot that we talked about before, we are higher in some locations than the neighboring agencies too, but I can dig that out and forward it down
So
here.
you're comfortable with what?
Yeah.
Okay, well then, never mind.
And honestly, the amount of rural calls we have is probably 10% of our overall volume, so we're really not running out in the county that much.
Is there any specific use behind these funds that they have to be allocated to? Or is there, is this like an emergency fund only, or like you said, towards the truck, or?
We basically use it as just, if something unexpected comes up, if I need a set of tires and we didn't budget for it, I pull it out of the mechanical line item in the rural fire fund, so it doesn't deplete my maintenance budget for keeping the trucks running. And so it's kind of, I would call it like an emergency fund. We do say this is what it would be designed for, but
Okay.
we don't use it unless we need to.
You got one of your pickups out of this, didn't you?
Yeah.
And then your four-wheeler, or your side-by-side?
The side-by-side came from a grant, but
Oh, did it? Okay.
what we do, a lot of the...
Trailer maybe, or?
The trailer came from grant too. What we do with a lot of the money, the grants, we put it in a rural fire fund to hold it, and then we spend it out of the rural fire fund. It's kind of a temporary holding facility too.
Well, the reason I asked was just the thought of the possibility of the paint expense coming out of a fund like this. You know, what kind of expenses do we foresee that could potentially really take a dent to this thing, or do we think it's just going to, has it remained steady over the years to where we might be able to take a risk of being able to take the paint, you know, that kind of expense out of this fund, or just bringing up an idea?
That would be up to you guys to decide. The main use that we've had over the years is buying the miscellaneous trucks. The big trucks, our pumper tankers, the ladder truck, all that came from city budget, and then the smaller trucks are pickups, the Suburban we just recently bought, the support vehicles come out of the rural fire fund. So we kind of use that as a capital improvement type, buy vehicles out of, but we're actually doing pretty good in that account. So
Yeah, that
would be a decision. If you guys want to do that, I wouldn't have a problem using it because we go up about $26,000 if I'm not mistaken,
So it'd
26,
just be a wash or
27,000
so.
every year with the fire tags.
Thank you.
Steve, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kenny.
Thanks,
Yes,
Chief.
sir, I appreciate
Any
it.
questions, give me a call.
Thank you.
Okay, with the amount of time we have, I think we'll just go ahead and shut her down here and take about 10 minutes, get ready for our meeting. It's okay with everybody?
Perfect, thanks.